Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, frequent flyers, wherever you're dialing in from today. Thank you for joining us today here in the lounge. I am very excited because one of my besties in aviation is with me today, Tristan. I had so many people message me to say, oh my God, I love him. I can't wait to see your episode. So I'm really excited to have you here. And we are going to be talking today about erasing perfect and redefining what success not only looks like, but what does it feel like? And how do we know when we get there? We'll probably take some surprising twists and turns from the usual topic and narrative around this conversation. And I'm really excited to dive in. Tristan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited. I think there's a lot of fun topics that, as you say, are atypical for, our group of friends and our group of colleagues. So I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to start off by asking, I always have a quote with all of my shows. And the quote that you actually gave me was to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And this comes from the Ulysses, if I pronounce that correctly, Ulysses, by Lord Tennyson Alfred. Can you tell me a little bit why this quote and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's a never-ending quote. It basically teaches, or it taught me, that you can look for things, you can search for things, but just because you find something doesn't mean you need to stop, right? Curiosity, I think, is an amazing gift that not a lot of people explore, and it's all about driving that exploration.
I love that. Curiosity is one of my core values. It's a core part of my identity and who I am. And it's a really great balm for connection when we become curious about what we're experiencing, about how we relate to other people. But I really like that, just because we reach an destination, an end goal, it doesn't mean that we stop seeking. But I also want to point out that we should very much celebrate along the way all of these things that we do find, because otherwise we end up constantly seeking and constantly striving. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think the most powerful part of it is the and not to yield. Whether that's yielding to pressure, it's yielding to, I've accomplished a thing. Does that mean the end of it? It goes right back to seek, to find. It's an ever repeating cycle. So it means different things on different days. It means different things to different topics, but it's this almost like a Cartesian circle. It just keeps going.
I love that. And that's really how our journeys of life are, right? They are often, sometimes they feel circular, but we're actually ascending. We're experiencing different levels, gaining new perspectives. And I really appreciated that you wanted to talk about these journeys that we have in life and how we can, will, and should start over because of the differences and how they show up for us, what they mean to us. So talk to me a little bit about some of the journeys that you've had. You were born in the Caribbean. You were in the Pirates of the Caribbean film. We share this affinity for being on stage.
Yeah.
And, you consumed a lot of books and TV as a child, and that really allowed you to explore these different realms of existence. So tell me a little bit more about, your upbringing and these different journeys that you've had and from there into aviation.
Sure. Yeah, growing up in the Caribbean, my family and I were on the north end of the island. I didn't start school until I was, I think, 8.5 years old. So my world was really TV, story times from mom and dad. And, you'd play fantasy in your head of, oh, I'm a police officer today, or I'm a cops and robbers, I'm a pilot. I grew up watching crop dusters spray banana fields. So I always used to think, what is that person thinking? What do they do? And I was very fortunate to have a family that just allowed me to be me. I don't think a lot of people get that. No. So I got to, on a day-to-day basis, change my character, change what I was going to explore that day. Early teenage years, I decided I liked the violin just because that's the music I had available to me. So I said, let me go and try how to do it. And, you know, also our culture in the Caribbean is very story driven, right? There's always a tale to be told, even if it's to say I went to the grocery store. It's I went to the grocery store. There's all elaborate details. There's a beautifully crafted narrative. So all of that just led me to, you tell a story a couple of times and then it becomes boring. So how do you tell a better story tomorrow?
Oh, I love it.
Expose yourself to something different, something new.
Yeah, I love that so much. And even just you describing that upbringing, it painted a very vivid picture in my head. And we really do think in pictures. We don't think in words, you know, and we have these vivid experiences, and the more we can connect through those and in the storytelling of those, right? It's really special. And it's like what brings the sparkle into people's eyes. And I could see that as you were speaking.
Yeah, you know, I think it's in the preview for the episode, but I really do believe that there's magic, and magic comes in lots of flavors.
Yeah.
And when you're able to tell a story and watch somebody like really get on board and follow it, and you know, I think a lot of folks miss the magic of a campfire story.
Oh, okay.
No distractions, but you're in the woods, you're isolated, it's dark, and that feel, the emotive reaction listening to a story, it's fun to watch, which is why it's fun to tell.
It is. And you know what? Being around a campfire, it's so primal, and it's, you know, humans gather around campfires. We gather on food. We gather to tell stories during these times. And that's how we connect. And that's how we've connected for millennia. And it's really, really powerful. And there's something also that happens when it's, you know, it's dark, you're not under these bright lights, you've got this warm fire, and it's almost like you're compelled to share in a different way. And I still remember, you just sparked a memory for me, in Hong Kong during COVID, we'd go camping a lot because, you know, couldn't do much else. And I was with this group of people, and it was called Retribe. It was about remembering who you are, finding your tribe, being in nature, a lot of this kind of stuff, right? And we're around the campfire, and we've told some stories, and Dima sends around this pumpkin that had been cooked too long, so it was real mushy. He asked all of us to like hold the pumpkin and share the experience of what it felt like to touch this pumpkin, and then to also share what we're most afraid of. So we had like something soft to hold and like feel comforted by, but also to share a deep fear. And that might sound like people going like, oh no, I would never do that. When you're around a campfire and you've been already sharing for a little while, you get this vulnerable side of you open. We all shared, and we all became so much closer afterwards. And that was magical.
Yeah.
Was magical.
Well, I think there's also an element of the campfire storytelling that is about survival. It's about sharing what is dangerous, what isn't dangerous. And it never ceases to amaze me that you'll take a person who says, oh, I don't believe in X. Tell them a story in the context of X and see how they react to it. Right? Oh, I don't believe in Bigfoot, but talk to them about Bigfoot in the woods, especially if it's dark outside, and watch how quickly they react to that.
Right. Absolutely. We've got Eric with us today. Thanks for joining live, Eric. We both really appreciate you being in our world now of aviation. But he said story is a great vehicle for vulnerability, which it absolutely is. And, you know, it connects to the humanness of our experiences, which is ultimately what it's all about, right? And I also believe that there's magic in everything. And I'm going to really be a nerd here. And I literally have a Harry Potter wand that I got from Platform 9 3/4 in London when I went last year. I was speaking at CGI London, and I was like, I'm going to Platform 9 3/4. You can't stop me. And I got this wand, and it was fantastic. It was Cedric Diggory's wand from Hufflepuff.
Oh, yeah, I think Hufflepuff is such an underrated house, but I think that's for a podcast for another day.
Yeah, that is. We can, you know what? We should do like a little, tie it to personality assessments and like give every character in aviation.
I've got 12 people in
That's what we're going to do at base. MBAA, we've just decided we're all going to be sorted into houses. We're all going to wear capes. I've got a green cape already. So like I'm golden. I've got a Hufflepuff wand and a Slytherin cape. You know, it's fine.
Hey, it's a mashup, right? It's all about
we're allowed to be who we are. So, there we go. I love it. And you know, I love that in your write-up, you were telling me about some experience with ghosties and talking about some woo on Friday. I mean, it is Good Friday, and there's a ghost story for this weekend. So I think it's only fitting that we talk about some ghost stuff. What do you think?
Okay, so I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, and I think that's one hell of a mashup right there.
Isn't that hilarious? I mean, talk about magic. The synchronicity of that was just, I couldn't help myself.
Well, so there's 2 things I think that are interesting to talk about. I'm happy to share some of the ghosty stories. But I think there's also an element of, you know, we talk storytelling, we talk legend, and then we can tie this back to aviation in a second. But, you know, when we look at the legends that our faiths are based on, you trace them back far enough, and a lot of them share so many really beautiful similarities. And at the end of the day, I think the tenets of most faith structures share the same element.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story to be told.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about curiosity, how has that really served you in your journey within aviation?
I would say it's probably the foundation of it. The only reason I got into it is I was thinking about what that crop duster was thinking and feeling. You know, how exciting, how scary, how wonderful would it be to leave the ground and explore everything above it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I got into aviation first with the Civil Air Patrol just because I wanted to get off the ground. So let's give back a little bit. Let's get involved. Wait, you were in Civil Air Patrol too?
I was, yeah.
But then I said, well, how could I do this in my real life? Well, I'm not going to go spend the money and the time to become a pilot. I'm also a rather large mammal, so you know, finding that is a challenge.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, I never was content doing one thing. It was always 2 or 3 things at a time. What else could I explore? What other hat could I put on? Become dangerous enough, but then move on to the other thing and touch that, explore that idea. So I've moved from dispatch to charter brokerage to charter operations to AFTech, and I couldn't have asked for a better place to end up than AFTech. And especially because I started off, or maybe not started off, but as an aircraft operator, I thought my future was I'm a dispatcher, so I will work dispatch. I'm a charter salesperson. I will be charter sales. I never realized how valuable the context of the work that I was doing was valuable to the tech side of the business. It was a whole new world to me. So it's got, my curiosity has really brought me in a ping pong journey to kind of where I am today.
I love that. Many pivots. And it really shows that, you know, I mean, we all pivot every day. We have a different role. I'm tying this back to what character am I going to play today?
Yeah.
Every day we wake up, we decide, what character am I going to play today? You know, is it Monday? What character will I play today? Because I'm going to X place, or, you know, I have a client dinner, or I'm going on a date night, or taking my kids somewhere, you know, having a new business meeting. Those are different versions of you, different characters that you're playing. It's still you. It's just a little, maybe different packaging even. Maybe it's the flavor of how you interact with people is different. And we were talking about this just before we went live, and how we sometimes don't recognize that we've stepped into character until someone else can point it out to us. Right? We both had experiences with our significant others commenting on how different it was to be with us at a work environment.
We're basically transformers.
We're transformers, you know, yeah, exactly. See, magic. We just like turned ourselves into, you know, we need this mischief map, the Moderators map to, mischief managed. I feel like we're the mischief managers of the industry. We could probably recruit a few other people.
That's the new club. That's the new thing.
That's gonna be the new thing. 40 under 40 is now called mischief managers. We're gonna relabel some things. No, but in all seriousness, it's, we do this unconsciously. We just show up a little bit differently, right? The version of you that is showing up with your partner on date night is a very different version of you than the you that's leading a team, the you that's running a marathon, right? And that's necessary because as one woman on my podcast before her, she wrote a book called Delete the Adjective, one of the first female Army Rangers, saying that adjectives do not define us, they describe us. And when we take the labels away, it allows us to play more. But when we have the label, we define ourselves in this really rigid structure and like put ourselves into a box, right?
And that's interesting. Is it the box that the world puts on us, or is it the box that we put ourselves in without realizing it?
Very often it's the latter, because we're expecting the world will put us there. So we just put ourselves there.
And if you take that into context with what we do on the daily basis in aviation, how you talk to an aircraft owner is not necessarily how you engage with a colleague or a leader or a pilot. We change the face, we change our character more often than we give ourselves credit for, and which is one, an exhausting process, but two, it's a maze that allows us to get lost very easily if we haven't spent the time to figure out who we are.
Absolutely. And that's why awareness is so critical, because it allows us to return back home rather than getting stuck in ping-ponging between different versions of ourselves and not knowing which one is the right fit, right? Or we're constantly trying to impress rather than express, right? My yoga teacher gave me this one. Well, the whole class, not just me, but it was, are you speaking to impress somebody, or are you speaking to express yourself? And it's really about how we show up, right? And so when we are very clear on that expression and we can be aligned with it, then we don't get lost in that skill set, which serves us very well at work. But then when we go home, it's almost like, we just don't know what version to be. And so there's some short-circuiting that can happen.
Absolutely. I mean, short-circuiting to the point of failure. I mean, it is so underrated because our culture doesn't teach us this. Our society doesn't teach us this, to spend the intentional time to try to, this is very woo-woo, this is very large scale, but who it is that we want to be without the mask on, right? And who that person is should be what at least guides us when we do show up at the executive level, at the team level, at the customer front end versus the back end version of us. If there's no North Star, you'll go around in circles for days.
Absolutely. The Japanese, I believe, have a saying. Oh, no, not Ikigai, but that is another thing. That's, that's more about like being in alignment with, that's like the sweet spot, right? Of what you can do, what you want to do, what you're skilled at, what the world needs, right? That's very powerful. But they have this saying that everyone has 3 faces. And it is the first face you show to the world. The second face you show to your close friends and your family. And the third face you never show anyone, but it's the most true reflection of who you are. And sometimes you don't even show that to yourself.
Yeah. I think that's very, very, very true. And an element that attaches to that is the different faces that you put on draw different energy from you.
Yes.
So until you start identifying it, you may start running your tank on empty more often than you realize. And, to use the aviation analogy, your engine's going to run dry. It's going to seize up.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you are constantly wearing that first mask that you show to the whole world, if there's a huge disparity between that and your true self, it requires a lot of energy. And so your on a faster track to burnout.
Absolutely.
It's harder to balance yourself and understand, why it's so tiring. And recently I've been thinking about and reflecting that I'm at this point in my life where I feel really good most days. It's very rare that I feel exhausted or spent or, these types of words that I probably used every single day for a large portion of my career, particularly working in dispatch also for a long time. And I was thinking about why that is. And recognize that in the past, I had very much been putting on almost a front of I need to present a certain way. I need to I need to assimilate and be accepted. Part of that was being young. Part of that was being a woman in a male-dominated field. Part of that was being in a different culture for a large part of my career. So there's a lot of reasons why that took place. But the more I shrunk that gap between what I show other people and just who I am,
Right.
the less energy I have to put out because I'm just being me. And the best compliment I got the other day was, "You are exactly what I expected from your online presence to be who I thought you were when I met you." I was
That's
like, yeah.
the same one. But you couldn't be more right. I think that's one of the more magical aha moments that comes from being part of this evolutionary journey, right? Recognizing you need to be on a journey, understanding what methodology, what path, because I think it's an interesting dichotomy. You have 1,000 options for how to self-help and get better, but because there are so many options, it stresses you out. So
Right.
as you starting, it's this really terrible mixture. But try some things out, and you'll hit these aha moments. And I think it's wait, I've spent the time and the energy to figure something out. So that gap is shorter, therefore the energy is less, which means your day has more space in it. More room. Your head has more space and your heart has more space and more room.
Yes, I love that analogy. Give me space. Look, I even have my whole right here to remind me. Really that's what the spiritual journey is. A lot of people get really triggered by this word. But when we talk about it, spirit, like the things that make your spirit come alive, the things that make your spirit shine through you and we get to see you, that's part of the spiritual journey. Working is actually part of the spiritual journey. What you do for money is part of your spiritual journey. Whether you're starting a business or working for somebody else, all of this it's just the evolution of ourselves. And I think that a lot of people get hung up on that word spiritual because of many different reasons.
Well, spiritual, absolutely, but also the word love has never had a place in the workplace. Never. And it wasn't until an NBAA leadership conference where Monty Moran stood up. And his book is "Love is Free, but Guac is Extra." He had this beautiful, beautiful story of introducing humanity back into the workplace, treating people like people, not just using words, but using actions to back that up. And it was really a powerful moment to go, wait a minute, I'm with my colleagues, I'm with my peers, I'm in my industry, but yet we have somebody talking about love, and this is okay.
Yeah.
Wait, he's talking about how this translates into business value, strategic value. But at the core of it, it's now let's start treating people like people. And I think it's such a big pivotal moment for a lot of people in the room to kind of realize, oh, we don't have to self-edit to fit that professional image, right?
Right. Because the profession, like who defines what professional is, right? Look at my hair. Some people would say it's not professional. I still get the job done. I still do an excellent job. So does wearing the clothes, like if I put on a pilot's uniform and captain stripes, am I qualified to fly the airplane? No, not at all. Right. I don't have that type rating. I don't even have a pilot's license yet. So, I think I've got like 3 hours in my logbook, but
hey, 3 is better than 0. 3 is better than 0.
Is better than, exactly. Some is better than none. But it really is, we self-edit. That's the thing again, because we're making assumption about what the expectation is. So we're all doing this and nobody actually knows what they're doing. And we're kind of playing this silly little game. Whereas when we go on this path to really understand ourselves, then we can show up differently. And as you were speaking about love and being in the workplace and as leaders, we all say, I mean, English also, worst language for the word love. Like, we've got one word to describe how I love my dog, how I love guacamole and tacos, and how I love my partner, and how I love reading books. Like, those are all very, very different experiences using the same verb.
Right? Yeah, walk sits at the top, though. Yeah.
I mean, tacos are life. I actually have a little, it's like, it's got the hands together with holding a taco in the middle and then a rosary around. And then it says like salsa 24/7 underneath, because in this house we shall serve tacos, and it's like the best thing I have possession, basically. But other languages, Spanish, Italian, French, they're different words for different types of love, for different experiences. So when you expand that vocabulary, your experience is more nuanced. It's understood in a different context. And that is why feelings, the big scary F word, actually do have a place in the workplace, because they're data and they help us to understand so we can make better decisions. And a reframe perhaps around this word love is, we all love airplanes. We all love being in the sky. So you can't tell me there's no word or no room for love in aviation. The only reason you're in this industry is because you love it, right? So
it's funny. So I know Mr. Eric Kreitz is listening in. We had this conversation about how even the military has this approach to, look, we talk about loving our country. We talk about loving each other as members of this unit. We talk about loving all of these things, but yet we can't introduce those elements into an official statement that says, these are one of the principles that we go by. That's too weird. That it has too many connotations. But by the same token, words have such power, right? And I don't think that's quite woo-woo to say that. The words have incredible, incredible power. And we have this habit of devaluing what some words mean. So being careful about your choice of words. You know what? Sarah's just asked me a question. Let me take a couple of seconds of silence to think through what I really want to deliver here. Deliver it. We have this instinct of instant response. Give yourself a little bit of space and choose the words that get your point across.
Yeah, that slowing down and allowing things to settle. I think a lot of Americans don't know how to sit in silence. Not just Americans, a lot of the Western cultures that have traditionally valued individualism and this like speed, get there fast, look at all my accomplishments and my degrees and all these things, which none of that matters. Like, if I die tomorrow, does anybody care that I had an MBA? No. Right? They care how I made them feel and how the memories we had together and all of those things. But in Japan, a lot of times in Asia too, and not just in Japan, a lot of Asian cultures, but that silence really is golden, because it's showing respect for the other person to process what you just said. Shows if I'm silent after you ask me a question, I'm demonstrating that I really am taking in what you said, and I'm giving it the respectful time to contemplate and come up with an answer before I respond to you. But if you don't know how to sit in silence, you just start talking more, you may never get the other's insight. You may never get that other piece, right? And so doing that for yourself is such a gift. It's such a gift.
It's also scary, because when there is silence, there's nothing. When there's too much silence, all we're left with is us. And I think not a lot of people have taken that time to connect with who they are. And again, this is very woo-woo, and you can extrapolate all different types of meaning. But understanding who it is that you are and being comfortable in your own silence that is, once you unlock that video game level, it's a whole new world.
Oh yeah, and it is. It's literally just a video game level.
Yeah.
And you know, as you're speaking, the sounds of silence started by Simon and Garfunkel started like playing in my mind. Such a great song. I wish I had it like on standby that I could just.
There's a
my next level is to like DJ the podcast, you know. But yeah, you know what? Hey, maybe that's the thing.
Harry Potter, a little DJ on the side.
Oh, speaking about Harry Potter, with all this AI stuff, sometimes you gotta love it because it created this like deep, dark, like underground grunge scene photos of Harry Potter and like Hermione and Ron and like Voldemort and Dumbledore dancing in this, like, in the photos like black and white, and it played this like real like deep grungy music. And you're like swiping through those photos and you're just like, oh, this is a whole new version of Harry Potter.
Not where I thought you were going, but yeah, I could see where that.
We're allowed to go down the rabbit holes. I wanted to share this because you talked about this fear, right, and being in silence, and it made me just think about, you know, like when you're in space, when you're underwater, when you're in these scenarios where there literally is nothing but silence, and you're with your own thoughts. That can be very scary for some, but it can be very not rejuvenating is not the right word. I want to be careful with the word that I use here. It can be very serene for others with this silence, because you get the space to think without feeling this pressure to do something. And my friend just shared this on his Instagram, one of my best friends, Jai, and it says, "You're a ghost driving a meat-coated skeleton made from stardust, riding a rock, hurtling through space. Yeah. Fear nothing." And I was like, that right there, that's there's on the motorbike. There's
a great, you and I both share an appreciation for this comedian. I blank on his name, where he talks about that as we're on this rock that's traveling at millions of miles an hour in space that's nothing, that's getting bigger, but we don't know by how much. And it really puts a lot of things into kind of interesting perspective, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think silence is not transformative. Well, it can be transformative. I think it's process. It's scary first, then it's relaxing, then it's scary, but then it becomes meditative. I don't know if it's just me being the odd kid, but I remember back home, you know, whether it's a little rock or something in a pool or in, you know, shallow water, going down to the bottom and sitting underwater.
I used to do that.
Yeah, and just kind of listening, right? It's a unique experience that we don't often allow ourselves.
Yeah, and it's really about cultivating that for yourself too. You know, maybe that means you get up a little bit earlier before the kids, before your partner, before you take your dog for the walk, and you don't even have to get out of bed. You know, you just sit in silence in the dark for a couple of minutes and, you know, just kind of let yourself contemplate whatever you need to contemplate. It's, you know, you can watch your own mind. It's really not about not having thoughts. It's just about being curious about what's going through your mind. And it can be terrifying to be in silence. I did a 10-day silent meditation course of Vipassana in 2022.
It's intense.
It's very intense. There's no nonverbal communication. Men and women are separated. No nonverbal communication. So you don't hold the door open for people. You can't make eye contact, right? Like nothing. So even though you're with other people, you're very much in your own experience. And you are up at 4 a.m. and you go to bed at 9 p.m. and you are essentially in meditation the whole time. And they teach you how to focus your attention on the breath and the sensations you feel. And then you expand that over to, you know, your whole body. But you really go through very many different processes of understanding and levels of awareness. And you watch your mind like unfold and then like spring back together to try to like structure a reality around what's happening, which is nothing. And it's a fascinating process. It is absolutely, I think everyone should experience it at least one time.
You know, you just said something about structuring reality, and that's a whole thread of conversation that I am now beginning my journey on that thread. How does, if I think about something that worries me enough, my heart rate goes up, right? I have created a reality for myself.
Mm-hmm.
The reverse is so true, but we never pay attention to that. But before going off on that thread or a different thread, that sounds like a wonderful meditation experience. But I think what's also important is to understand that there are so many forms of meditation.
So many.
Some call it prayer. Some call it exercise. Some call it video games to an extent. Cooking, hiking, being in or with nature. Meditation, I think, is just about freeing the noise, allowing just your observation of what's going on around you, right?
Yeah. And there's different ways to, depending on, again, the school of thought, meditation versus mindfulness, but essentially you're actually focusing your mind. You're not emptying it. You are human. There's no such thing as an empty mind. There never will be.
I know some people, but
well, that's a different kind of empty, and bless them, bless their hearts. I learned that in Texas. That's something I learned. So, but it really is. It's about, if you're focusing on your breath, you're focusing on the sensations of the body, and you're being curious, you are still focusing, and that is also a great skill set to hone. Right? We have lost the art of focus. Many people do not know how to do this anymore, and we have all become ADHD with these things.
Absolutely.
And when we focus, we get the clarity, we get that aha moment. And that is really, I think, what we're both saying here about the spiritual journey.
Absolutely. I mean, there are 1,000 roads that lead to Rome, right? It just depends on which one is best suited for you.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's a thing that I had struggled with is, which path, right? There's 10 paths in front of me, which one? And I think, I'm not positive about this, but I think Jerry Seinfeld had a quote about, if there's no road in front of you, create one. Just do it.
Yeah. Start
trudging along, create your own path. If you're wrong, go back, switch it up. You're not a tree. You're not planted in one spot. Okay. That's actually a really good point, is this idea of failure is so critical, and it is at the forefront of so many of our minds, conceptions, actions. When we enter situations with failure as the first thing on our mind, we're not looking at the potential for success or what that might mean. We put too much emphasis on the failure aspect, not enough emphasis on the journey and the process and being okay to try things. I think that's the curious part. Try things, let it fail, figure it out, try it again.
Well, and that comes from the impress versus express. Like, does the toddler care that they keep falling down? No, they want to they're going to walk. They are determined. And they will keep doing it until they're zooming around and you're chasing them. So they don't damage everything in the house, right? And get into things. They're so quick. But when we come back to that, it is, without those failures, we would not grow. Without pushing the boundaries and trying new things, the whole scientific method, right? There's a lot of failures that go into all of the successes that we see in the technology that we have, in the periodic table, and how these elements work together and how we get them to bind together, and the light bulb, and like all of these things. Without the failure, we cannot test the reality of what's possible. And so if we just sit there not ever wanting to fail, we will do nothing. And I love that you mentioned creating your own path, because especially in business aviation, that is exactly what you do. I don't know a single person in this industry that has applied for every single job. Like, that may be the first job they apply for. And then after that, they're creating new roles, they're creating new opportunities, and it like just happens, rather than like, oh, here's an opening and let me look at all these CVs and then I'm going to pick somebody. It's usually, no, that's the right person for our company. And now let's create a role around that and design a business model that fits where we want to go.
And I think that plays right into we are an industry that spans the globe, but we are an incredibly small industry by the same token. There is very rarely a month that goes by before I cross paths with somebody in some shape or form where I've worked at the same company, we've worked together, we've collaborated together. I not too long ago joined ForeFlight. And it's funny, I've met several contacts that I've encountered at different phases of my career, and it's really magical. And I think, yeah, that plays into the storytelling. It's who you are, what you bring to the table. Sorry, I'm rambling and losing my train of thought here. But it's the network effect. It's the, I'm sorry, you were talking failure.
Yeah, no, but this ties very much into that, because we moved down the track of like creating your own destiny, and then how the positions are all linked because of relationships.
There we go. Yeah, it's how everything is interconnected.
Yes. And I mean, I was just at Women in Aviation last week in Orlando, and I hear my name get called, and I turn and I see someone that I haven't seen for like maybe 5 years that I know from Asia. And the last time we saw each other was at a Universal party in Shanghai at A-Base. And he's like, "What are you doing here? So far from Hong Kong." I was like, "Man, I haven't lived there for 2 years." You know? And he's like, "What? When did that happen? Oh my God, you cut your hair." I was like, "Yeah, there's a lot to catch up on." So, you know, it was, it's so funny how that works. I mean, when I first got to Hong Kong, one of the charter brokers that I used to quote a lot from the the company that I worked for before, which was Jet Edge 1.0, was now my colleague at Hong Kong Jet. You know, so it is a very small industry, which is also why it's important to improve your communication, know who you are, not explode at people, and understand how to regulate your own emotional experience so that you can connect rather than destroy, right? It's not about winning or being right. It's about, how do I want to feel in this moment? And how do I want to feel in this, like, moving forward? Do I want to make this difficult for myself, rather than thinking of like, why should I do this so that person? It's no, how do you want to experience the situation? If you have a solution just by a simple behavior change or a communication change, why not use it? It's going to be so much better for everybody involved.
Well, you said the other person, and I think we are so constantly comparing ourselves to others, and whether professional or personal lives. And a good friend of mine helped me. I don't recall the exact quote, but it's, "Comparison is the thief of all joy," I think it is. And it took me longer than I expected to appreciate what that meant. Oh yeah, if I compare myself, I'm not happy. Fine, next. But no, it's really and truly, if I stop considering what other people think, it frees me up. And then you will then have your aha moment of, oh, and this is going to sound terrible, but how often do I think about that person's work habits? Maybe in the moment, maybe. But the reality is I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that person in terms of a performance or comparison until I'm in the moment. And I have to think, well, do they think about me as much as I think that they think about them?
Right. We can go several inception layers deep on that one.
Oh, but the idea being is, I've now had the moment of realizing that not everybody is spending their day thinking about my performance. Right. That frees me up in so many different areas.
Well, and when you stop thinking about winning, like, I have to win, I have to be the best, I have to prove myself.
Yeah.
That goes away, because now you're just being you, you're expressing to connect. And that, we know, by far furthers relationships and opportunities beyond anything else, right? And when you also, you know, like, let's flip that around. Instead of worrying so much about what others think, what do you think?
Right.
Right? That is actually the most important thing in your reality. Because if you're doing something based on what others think, but you think it's BS, or you think it's a crock, or you think it's terrible, you're eroding your own self-trust, your own self-confidence. You're, you know, going against your own values and boundaries. So guess what? Other people won't respect those either.
You just said something that has been an aha moment for me. It's the erosion of self-trust. Every time you say that you're not going to have, you know, everybody has their own choices, but every time you say that you won't have that cookie, but then you go and get that cookie, effectively you're lying to yourself. And we create these patterns of lying to ourselves to the point at which, at the end of the day, we end up not trusting our own opinions, our own feelings, our own approach to things. And because we take so long eroding it, we need to spend as much or possibly more time gaining it back. So how do we gain back the ability to trust ourselves and our decisions, our feelings, our thoughts?
It's like the frog that gets boiled, right? If you put a frog in water and you start to heat up that pot, it's not going to jump out because the water is just slowly getting hotter and hotter until the frog is cooked. But if you were to throw the frog into a pot of boiling water, you can sure as hell bet it's going to try to get out of there right away.
Yeah.
And this slow erosion, and this is also why we fight so hard. When we become defensive, it's very often because we're not actually anchored in that belief anymore, or we don't know why we're doing the thing. And because of that, that's scary. So we have to defend it.
And we tie so much of our own identity into the things we say. I think I said one thing 6 years ago, and I'm still holding myself accountable to that thing.
My God, if I was doing that, geez, some of the things I said 6 years ago, I was a very different version, guys. From 6 years ago. Like we all were, and that's okay. We're supposed to grow and evolve and change, and we can bring levity to the situation. I mean, some of the powerhouses in our industry, like Cheryl Barden and Jennifer Pickrell, just made an amazing recreation of the Step Brothers photo. And it was like the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. Right. And it's like, we can laugh at ourselves. We should laugh at ourselves. Life's not that serious.
It's so critical to know that it is okay to have said something and go, you know what, I've considered and I've changed my mind. I've changed my point of view. My perspective, who I am now is different to who I was yesterday. But we are so locked into my identity is what I said, and I will die on this hill.
Right. And you know what? When you own it, everything else falls into place.
Yeah, it becomes easier.
Right? You can go, yeah, I said that. I was a moron. I didn't understand these other perspectives. And I don't think that way anymore because I've learned some new things.
I'm different.
Right? Yeah. And then people go, oh, okay. It takes a charge out of it. When you own it and you know who you are because you do this work, then feelings is not the scary word. It's not the scary F word. Failure is not a scary F word. And they become the things that actually fuel you because you use your feelings as a barometer, as data to help you navigate all the failures so that you can get to the place you actually want to be. Because you don't know what you like until you experience it and go, oh, that was actually shit. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. There is this concept of I stuck to my guns as the flex. I really think that the true flex is being there with some guns. I'd show you mine, but I don't want to make you feel bad.
That's okay.
I think flex is in being conceptually flexible, thoughtfully flexible, spiritually flexible. The idea of this is a whole other strewn of conversation. But our ability to have a conversation without getting angry. And that's not just about the workplace or rudeness. Having the ability to converse an idea, to toss an idea back and forth, not for the sake of conversion, but for the sake of the conversation itself. And that's something that society, I think, has lost. And I have an opportunity within our community, niche communities, smaller communities, to kind of bring that back. Open table, not invest identity into the things we're talking about.
Yeah, having the art of dialogue and rhetoric, it's so important. I was on a podcast, and I've done a couple with these two gentlemen. With Yonason Goldson runs Grappling with the Gray. He's called Ethical Ninja. And he brings these very gray scenarios and a panel of speakers, and we have a dialogue about it. And I remember the first time I was with these two gentlemen, JC Click and Scott Mason, it was the first time I have ever seen, particularly two men, have a passionate dialogue without devolving into animals and name calling and chest poking. It was actually a really beautiful thing to witness, and how respectful they were in sharing and expressing and considering the other viewpoint, not necessarily wavering on like, this is what I believe, but okay, I will listen to what you believe and I will take that perspective in, and I get that point, and I still have this belief over here.
Right.
It was powerful.
Yeah.
And that is something that we really do need to bring back. I mean, just look at the US political system.
Yeah.
If we had that, that would be so different. Because again, right now it's like, I need to win. I need to dominate. It's like you against me. If you're not with me, you're against me. No, that's not actually true.
Yeah. It's not exactly in parallel to that, but one of my most interesting career moments is when I had a chance while I was at Avinode. I was hosting their academy. And they had a panel of operators and brokers. And it was supposed to have gone one way, but it really evolved into an open kind of town hall. You had people from the audience throwing things in. And it was, I think, for the first time I'd ever been exposed to a community that we all work together on a daily basis. But this was probably one of the first times that these folks actually got to say their piece and be heard for their piece, right or wrong with it. That was your chance to talk. And we missed that, I think. And through podcasts like Sarah the Pivoter and The Lounge, I think some of these forums are really bringing back the opportunity to just talk.
Yeah. That was something I really appreciated about this year's leadership conference by MBAA, because they changed the format a little bit from previous years. And, I was one of the keynote speakers. They had a panel of some of our industry professionals. And it was powerful because it took what all these keynote speakers had and put it into the context of what their experience was, right? And these are industry veterans, really well-respected people in our industry. And it gave the connection point. And it was this sharing. And all of a sudden, like that, the lunch after that panel, people were crying. People were like so moved because they finally felt heard. They felt seen.
Right.
And that is one of the most powerful things, to see another human being.
Yeah.
And it's even half the time when your clients are pissed off at you because there was a mistake, they don't want to hear your lame excuse for why you messed up. They want to hear that that it was hard for them.
Right.
And as soon as you acknowledge that and say, own it, we messed up. I know it was really impactful to your schedule. This is what we're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
That's when they go, thank you. And half the time they don't need a refund. They don't need, it doesn't become nasty more than half the time. But we're so scared of that being the outcome that we then refuse to give up this position of, well, no, it wasn't actually our fault. It was because of this thing or tech glitch or whatever. Nobody cares about that. They just want to know that you see what happened. And as soon as that's acknowledged, everything else is different. I love that you brought that up.
Instead of planting your flag on the hill you plan to die on, sit down.
You will die there.
Yeah. Sit there, have a dialogue.
I can't tell you how many times, like as a kid, I would so steadfastly, I'm very stubborn, I'm tenacious, I reframed it to holding on to this position.
Yeah.
And my mom would she'd see right through it, right? And I used to always wonder, how does she know? But like as an adult watching kids lie or like do whatever they're doing, you're like, oh my God, are we done yet? Like it's so obvious. And I remember once holding so fast to my position, being like, no, I'm not giving in. Like, nope. I know I'm wrong, but no, I won't give in. And then my grounding got up to 3 weeks and it was summertime. And I was like, my mom was like, you ready yet? And I was like, I didn't even say the words. I just nodded my head. Like, okay, fine.
Sometimes, as much of a storyteller as I like to be, sometimes words aren't sometimes a simple nod's as much as you need.
The most powerful parts of a speech are often the moments of silence.
Yeah.
Not when you're speaking. One of the girls in my grad class at Heroic Public Speaking, she and I became besties also. Amy Giannotti, if you're watching, I love you. She, in her keynote, has a section where she's telling a story about a grade school birthday experience. And so she was being directed, and she went, and Michael was like, nope, don't speak yet. Hold. And every time she went to open her mouth, he's like, hold. By the time he let her speak, there wasn't a dry eye in the room because that silence had settled so much and we were all uncomfortable with what had just been said. Some people were full on crying, but it moved us in a way that it was so memorable. And it wasn't even while she was speaking. We watched the video back later that night, 36-second pause.
Right.
But it was what was necessary for us to truly appreciate the gravity of what had happened.
Yeah.
And that is something we can all learn from. And that is how we also can start to, erase this perfect idea that we all have, the title of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Giving ourselves that grace, just that space to think is what allows us to gain new perspectives.
And quite frankly, perfect is a state of being, one, I don't think is attainable. And two, it's a fixed state of being. So to the very first point of to seek, to find, and not to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Perfection, you get there and then you're there. If you get there, you're there.
Right.
But who we are when we set off on that journey to perfect has changed several times over, hundreds of times over. So that's why perfect doesn't exist, is because it changes, it evolves, it moves. It's not a fixed target. So going back to the point is we're ever changing. Our opinions change, our stances change. So erasing perfects, I think, just is about giving yourself the grace to go towards the goal.
Yeah.
But not being fixed on it. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said, if you don't achieve your dreams, don't change your dreams, change the way in which you achieve them.
I like that.
Yeah.
And to that point also, sometimes the dreams change along the way because you get new information, you get new input, and you start to realize, like, actually, I don't want that thing anymore. And that's okay too. I can put that on the shelf. I can just throw it away and redefine what it looks like. So much of the time we are focused on what it looks like. We don't know what it feels like. So then we get the thing that looks like what we thought we wanted, and it feels terrible. So focusing on the feeling that you want to have is actually going to be how you get your success. When you avoid the feeling because you're scared of failure, that's actually going to be what puts you there.
And spending the time to understand what your feeling is. It's a point we've reiterated, but I think some of the best advice I've ever gotten, but also the framework for advice, is I think we go into an advice situation as, what should I do?
Right.
Whereas I now think of advice as the flip. It's, by talking to somebody, am I learning what not to do, what I don't want out of it? Because when you look at what you're wanting to do, the whole world is your oyster, right? Become an astronaut, do this, do that. But when you take a step back and you say, well, Tristan, do you like confined spaces? No. Okay, well, that chops so much out of that picture.
Right.
So yeah, it's spending the time to think of what you do want, but also, as importantly, perhaps more importantly, what is it that you don't want?
Absolutely. And what discomfort are you willing to go through or not willing to go through in order to get that thing, outcome, result that you want? Everybody, my neighbor and I were admiring another neighbor who had just finished a run and was like glistening in the sunshine with all the ripped muscles. And he's like, oh, yeah, I mean, it looks gorgeous, right? But I'm just not willing to stick to the food diet. And I was like, I hear you. I'm okay with like the top abs, but you know, I like my cookies and I like to treat myself too. I now know that about myself. Like I am willing to do X amount of discipline, but I also want to have this pleasure over here.
Right.
So, and that's okay. If I'm trying to do those, but demand that I get this over here, it's a recipe to suffer.
Yeah.
Right. So it's also really important. Things require your energy. They require effort. Knowing what you are willing to put in, whether that's finances, effort, time,
right.
You know, all of that is the currency towards something. And you won't always be willing to do those things. That's okay too. We go through seasons, different seasons of life.
And quite frankly, I don't necessarily think discomfort, financial discomfort, physical discomfort, in the appropriate context and setting, of course,
right.
I don't think they're bad things.
No.
Great things. It's so silly. Right at the precipice of making a decision to move from Miami, where I had lived for 4.5 years, to move here to Texas, you know, hashtag Lone Star. I was in a Marshall's and I saw one of those things written up that says, great things never come from comfortable places. Yeah. And that has stuck with me almost every single day, running through my head. Great things will never come from comfortable places. Doesn't mean being in a constant state. And that's the thing I recognize, is I don't want to be in a constant state of discomfort.
Right.
I'm not looking to be the all-star.
Right.
I'm comfortable here. I like being in this zone. That zone matches the amount of discomfort I'm willing to put in to get the amount of output I want to get out of the situation.
Yeah.
And I think we're always on this journey of achieving the most. Is the most what you really want, though? Meanwhile, this zone right here might be exactly where you want to be, need to be, but you just haven't realized it yet.
Absolutely. Sometimes the highest path is often not the easiest path. And the easiest path is usually not the highest path. Sometimes it is, often not. And one of my friends that I connected with recently, he sent me this story of the Mexican fisherman. And there's this, I'm going to paraphrase it and make it shorter, but it's really pertinent to what you just said. There's this American that's down in this little village in Mexico, and he sees this guy come up with these big swordfish that he's caught. And but he's only got 3. And he's like, oh, how come, you know, you already came in for the day? He's like, well, I have enough for my family. He's like, well, what are you going to do the rest of the day? He's like, oh, I'm going to go home and play with my kids and take a siesta with my wife. And we're going to have dinner. And then we're going to go drink wine with our friends. And then I can come fish again in the morning. We have enough for today.
Yeah.
And the American goes, oh, well, you know, that's not efficient. You can go and, you know, catch this many fish, and then you can hire more boats, and you can hire fishermen, and you can do all this. And he's like, okay, but how long does that take? He said, 15 to 20 years. And he's like, okay, and then what? Oh, well, then that's great. You go IPO and you sell the company for a ton of money. He's like, okay, great. And then what? And then, you know, and he goes down this track, and then he's like, and then what? After I sell and I get all this money, and then what? Oh, well, then you can take your kids to school, and you can have siestas with your wife, and you can drink wine with your friends and relax all day.
I get that today.
I get that today. I don't need to do all that other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was a really nice reframe, because it is kind of silly when you think about it. You know, we spin up our wheels and try to do all these things to feel important so that we can have this lifestyle that we can actually already have now.
Yeah.
If we just adjusted some of our perspectives. I
think it's just a flavor. I don't want to say of success. I think that's a loaded word. It's a flavor of outcome, right? Yeah. Because again, coming from St. Vincent, some of the happiest people I know in this world that I've come across in my lifetime are people who maybe don't have the most, but they have got such a rich, rich life, right? And I think that's a really important lesson, that having the most, or achieving the most, having the most letters behind your name, whatever your metric for success is, the most might seem good because other people see you getting the most, but it's not about what other people see. It's about what you feel comfortable, what challenges you enough, what satisfies you enough, and taking the time to realize what that sweet spot for you is now, near term, the next year or so, next 5 years, next 10 years, taking the time to really appreciate that, you know what, I do want to be number one. Well, buckle up, get ready, send it. I want to be number 3. Okay, get ready, buckle up, and send it. You know what? I'm happy with where I am right now. Awesome. Maximize it. Figure out all the things that work, the things that don't, eliminate those, improve the things that do. Find your sweet spot, find your happy place.
I love that. Yeah, because it really is like, how do you want to feel every day? You know, we hear these stories all the time of regrets on the deathbed. Nobody ever talks about, I wish I sent that email. I wish I, stayed on Zoom for 10 hours that one Friday instead of going off hiking or, whatever silly little thing that we convince ourselves is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
But it's often not until we experience it firsthand or in a very close aspect. But that's why I wrote a speech on slowing down. One, I needed that medicine myself because I had my own experience through burnout and health crisis at barely 30 years old. But last year, I almost needed more than 2 hands to count the people I personally knew were having heart attacks, strokes, major health-related issues.
Yeah.
All for what? In their 20s, in their 30s, all for what? You're not even close to the whole, you can retire and go take your siesta and fish all day and do whatever you want. And you're in this state, right? So again, it's like, how do you want to feel every day when you wake up? How do you want to be in relationship with the things around you?
I've unfortunately, actually, I take that back. Fortunately, been in circumstances in my working career where I was pushed to the point that my own family almost had to do an intervention to say, we haven't seen Tristan in weeks. And I didn't get that. And they said, you're a shell. You're not you. You talk, you're here, you're present, but you're not. You're really not present. And we'd like to see you again sometime. And I think that was my very first aha of, it's not worth putting in 120%. Yeah. Right? It's not, I'm not benefiting from it. And as not quite a funny story, but I was actually in a car accident once because of the mental fatigue that had taken its toll. And my physical reaction time, my mental processing time was so reduced that I had an accident that was fully preventable.
Yeah.
So again, the 120% was not worth it. And I think we're entering this space where we're recognizing that asking 80% of people often yields much better results than asking 150% of people.
Yeah, because it's more sustainable.
It's much more sustainable.
We need to, the latest sleep research is really astounding. I mean, it's showing us that if you're only sleeping 6 hours a night for 10 nights in a row, it's like being up for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Your cognitive ability, your executive functioning, your attention span, your reaction time, all of that, as you just so highlighted for us, is severely reduced. Guess what the average amount of sleep the adults get in the US. But I mean, if we even narrow it down to business aviation, a lot less than that.
Yep.
And it's probably not good sleep because the outlet for many people is extreme exercise, which is taxing the nervous system, or alcohol.
Right.
Because that's the legal form of, something that puts us in an altered state that, we can feel this stress relief from, because we don't have other outlets. We've not learned other things, or we're trying to numb and escape rather than process and resolve.
Right.
Which is why I got one of these things, the Whoop in hand, which I am very excited to say I'm now sponsored by. I'm an affiliate with them now. But no, honestly, I avoided this thing like the plague. I can't tell you, because I used to do CrossFit. I drank that Kool-Aid really hard, and I competed. I was a competitive athlete younger in my career. as well. And I thought to myself, I don't need data. I don't want to be run by the data and like get sucked into this competitive thing again. And I listened to this podcast by the Diary of a CEO with Kristen Holmes, the VP of Performance Science at Whoop. And it completely changed my mindset. I mean, my best friend, who I usually listen to, has been trying to get me to get this Whoop for like 2 years. And I was like, nah, no, not interested, right? You can lead the horse to water. You can't make it drink. But I listened to this podcast and I decided, you know what, I'll give it a try, because actually, based on these definitions, I'm a shift worker, which means my average lifespan is going to be 15 years shorter. And, you know, I'm a high performance person. I like to do things. I like to move. It is difficult for me to sit still. Some of that is conditioning and, you know, what I think I need to do. A lot of that is just I have a lot of energy and I like to learn. I'm insatiably curious, etc. I used to really struggle taking time for naps, or, you know, I'd think, it was a hard day. I'm going to go lift heavy weights, or I'm going to go hit a really hard run. I want to sweat, right? I want to feel good.
Yeah.
And we think we're doing the right thing, but we're actually impacting our nervous system, which, if you think about the day that we've just had with the intense focus, the constant change, we have actually just been under a high mental, cognitive, and central nervous system load.
Yeah.
That me going to do that workout makes me worse than I was before. So getting this, all of a sudden, and guess what? Rehearsing for leadership, I'm practicing my keynotes, 45 minutes. I'd finish, I'd go get a glass of water. Like, Sarah, you were in the high stress zone for 48 minutes. I was like, what? I didn't feel stressed. That was fun. But the way that your nervous system responds is load. It is strain. And now you're taxing mental load on top of physical load. And it's just compounding from there. It's logarithmic as well. It's not linear.
Well, that's why so many interrogation techniques are based on sleep deprivation, right? It's useful.
Yes, absolutely. So I started to wear this, started to gain insights into my lifestyle factors, made these micro adjustments, like not even huge things. I've never felt this well rested or recovered or strong every single day in the gym, rather than kind of like chasing well, I felt really good today. I hit it hard. And then like for 3 days feeling terrible.
Right.
So if you would like to try it, I do have a code. It's in the write-up of this podcast. You can get 30 days free. I'm literally on a mission. I'm here to spread the good word about Whoop, guys, because, you just got sparkly, Tristan.
Did you see that? I got magic. It's something to do with the camera. I think if you do certain gestures.
Oh my God, there's fireworks. I was like, what is this magic, Tristan?
Magic.
You are magic. Hold on. You gotta do it when I do like the wand thing.
1, 2,
Okay. I'm doing real bad at like sharing this Whoop thing, but honestly, guys, it'll change. Go listen to that podcast. You can try it for 30 days. I want to bring this into aviation, Tristan. And we talked about this before we went live, because the impact it had on me in just a couple of months, if I would have had this when I was dispatching, oh my goodness.
Yep.
I would have felt so different, because I would have also given myself permission to not go kill myself in the gym as a form of punishment for eating the candy bar to get me through the day and like relieve my stress or whatever, kind of cycles we go through. And I think it has the power to really give us insights into our behavior and help us move towards positive change, as well as become an industry best practice. SMS is coming online, which is also outrageous, because I, in Asia, was dealing with this for the last decade. But we need to look at fatigue management. It is a safety issue, a critical safety issue, not just when you're piloting an aircraft, when you're dispatching one, when you're controlling one from a tower, when you're turning a wrench on one, when you're making a decision on the schedule and realizing, hey, the airport's actually closed. We can't fly at that time.
I am so glad that you brought up that distinction, because rightfully so, we focus on the cockpit. We focus on the cabin. Not enough focus is given to the folks that are up at 2 supporting that mission, to the folks that are responding to the AOGs, as you say, turning the wrenches. There's so much more that goes on behind the flight.
Yes.
That is as critical to fatigue management, fatigue awareness, physical performance awareness. so much of that needs to get highlighted, doesn't get highlighted, or rather is in the process of being highlighted. So I'm really glad that you brought up that distinction.
Thank you. Yeah. And as an industry, obviously, why do businesses exist? To make profit, of course. However, if you really want to be performing and have a safe operation, the only things you can do are focus on things that optimize your performance, which includes your humans that need to have rest, that need to be able to make strong decisions and communicate well. And this is something that we can use to gamify fatigue management, to gamify mental performance. You know, mental health has such a stigma around it, but it is absolutely crucial that we talk about this.
Yeah.
It cannot be the elephant in the room anymore that we're trying to hide with like sheets and whatever and paint over it. No, this has to be forefront of every single conversation.
There's only so much that you can push under the rug before it's just.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone who wants to try it out, the code's down below, and talk to me about it. Ask me questions. I'm happy to share my experience. Honestly, it's changed my life more than I thought it would. And I also feel this like sense of control because I'm making decisions based on my data and I'm choosing how my experience will be. If I decide tomorrow that I can just get by, I might stay up later. I might have a couple drinks of alcohol. I might do the things that I know will impact my performance, but it's okay because tomorrow I don't need to be at my top level because it's a rest day or because I'm on vacation or whatever. But if I've got a huge thing going on tomorrow, huge pitch, I'm flying tomorrow, you know, whatever the thing might be for you, you now know all these factors that can boost that and put you in the most optimal performance. Why wouldn't you want that level of power over your own decision-making and clarity around your decision-making?
Oh, we talk about data-driven decisions, and there you go, right?
Right? AvTech, right? It's like it's all time.
Yeah, data is king. Data is absolutely king. And if data can start being utilized to leverage change where change is needed most, all the better.
And you know what? For someone who's very logical and linear, right? Type A personality, that's a large part of our industry. This data actually gives you, like you've got graphs, you've got all sorts of things, but it gives you the permission to make a decision on something that before you might have been like, that's a woo-woo feeling. I'm going to ignore that and sweep it under the rug because I need to perform and do this. And you'll actually see, well, that's actually the wrong path if you want optimal performance. This is a much better path, right? And so it helps you change your thinking because you get the data to support and you can see your own trends over time, which is phenomenal, right? Yeah. It is so powerful.
And again, you mentioned the thing about exercise and how much of us in stressful lives within the space, within aviation, rely on those, FBO cookies, the
so good.
So good. I'm not going to name who my favorite is. I'll tell you after. But yeah, how much of this will drive sleep change, stress change, physical, weight change, right? Like how much of this impacts the quality of work that we bring to the table, not just at work, but in our personal lives, right? For living healthier, better, more consciously, intentionally driven decisions based on data that we're providing to ourselves.
Yes.
In so many different spheres.
Absolutely. And it's really just taking back the controls for yourself, right? And no, I do all the puns, like it just happens and they're very much intended, but it's, they're there. But yeah, it's really, it can be fun, right? It can be really fun to see what some of the surprising things are and just know what your options are. But hey, when you feel good, right? Like everything else, your reality is colored by how you feel on the inside. So if you are not sleeping, if you're not recovering, if you're like exhausted, everything you experience is going to be through the lens of this is shit. How do I get it to stop?
You know what?
Go ahead.
Do a whoop group. That's a name for it. Do a whoop group into NBAA.
Yes, this is actually one of my missions. So NBAA, I'm sure you're watching. We're going to have a conversation about this. I already started talking to Molly Hitch. And I really want to do this because I'm in a group. My best friend called it Whoop, There It Is. So that's him and his wife and me and my partner. And then we have a chat that's not in Whoop, but like, so we can send each other resources and stuff. And I was thinking about Rihanna. Yes, I just snorted with my laughter. I was thinking about Rihanna, and so I made it Whoops and Chains.
Jeez.
See, I can't help myself. If there's puns, I'm going to bring them in. But yes, we're going to get some Whoop groups so that we can all go, whoop, there it is. Now I know what to do different. Otherwise, I might use my Whoop and Chain to get you moving. Okay, I'm done. Oh man, this is fun. See, guys, the lounge is a place where you just get to be yourself and have fun.
And you know, it's funny. I knew this would be a great call, but inevitably, no matter how much I, get involved with things like this or on stage, I always walk into it stressed and anxious. But this has been such a fun call.
Thank you, Tristan. No, it's been such a pleasure to have you here. And it's also important to recognize, I think one of the things you mentioned to me before was that even when you are well practiced at something, it's your craft, it's something you're good at, it can still be stressful. You also highlighted, you could be a super social person. You could be very extroverted. And then you might need to go and recharge because you're having some social anxiety. It doesn't mean that you're that way all the time. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, and I know for my own part that when I talk about my social anxiety, I love NBAA events, but it's always the same. It's the same process of gamifying myself for the events. And when I share that and I hear other people go, "Oh my gosh, you?" I know that sense of, it's a sense of bonding that, oh, you too. But I fall into the trap of looking at other people going, I mean, Sarah, I fell into that trap with you before we met, was you're so put together, or that person's so comfortable. And then you learn that they have the same anxieties that you do. It makes the world a less scary place. So I like talking about it. If at least one person walks away feeling, it's less scary for me now, that's a win.
Absolutely. Well, and I will piggyback on that because I also have those feelings. I have to go charge my battery. I'm an extreme extrovert. I will say that. And at the same time, I sometimes see people and I'm like, oh my God, I just need to go over there and no, please don't talk to me right now because I'm going to not know what to say to you. Yep. It just happened at Women in Aviation. And I had to go sit outside and just chill for a bit before coming back in. I even did a little dance outside. Someone saw me. Great. I have an alarm on my phone now at 6 p.m. every day. No matter what I'm doing, I'm going to do a 60-second dance. So if I'm ever giving a keynote at around that time, you might see me do a little dance improv.
I might jump on that train.
Someone's going to hire me now and be like, we're going to have you go live at 5:30 and show us what you got. So,
Well, how about this? If anybody wants some Caribbean Calypso recommendations, let me know. Soca, Calypso, I got you.
Amazing. We're going to do this at the next event we're at.
I am now.
Okay. I'm excited. We'll film it for everybody. We can share on an Instagram story. 24 hours. That's all you get. But it's true. I go through a process. I have a ritual also. I do a vocal warm up before I get on stage, and just doing that, moving the energy through my body and getting my breath, that really helps calm me and ground me. But just because someone looks put together on the outside does not necessarily mean that's how they feel on the inside. But clothes are so powerful. Mm-hmm. What we wear, talking about playing characters earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
We can literally transform our energy by how we show up and how we dress. It's why these little kids, when they're the most shy kid ever, and they put on Batman costume and they're super like in everybody's face and sociable and talking, right? And so knowing what's going to put you in the energy that you need to be in for whatever environment you're going into, give yourself that gift so that you can like step into the character and connect to that part of yourself, because it really does work.
It's so underrated. I mean, I think it was Clayton that you had on not too long ago that talked about, yeah, I care about how I put myself together because that, for lack of a better term, is armor, right? That is a card in my hand that I can play, and I think it's powerful. And there's a couple of folks in the industry that every time I see them, it's like, damn, you look sharp and put together, and it has impact. It has juice.
It does. And it's important to remember that a lot of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah.
And so the way you put yourself together is communicating something to others.
Right.
So being aware of what that is, you may not intentionally be trying to share a message, but what are you implying? What are you, what are the takeaways others might get? Because sometimes the way they perceive something that you do may not translate very well. Right. And I'm not just talking about in our industry. It's also just if you're in a different culture, right? If you're, and there's a lot of faux pas that happen because we're not aware of those things. So the more awareness, again, bringing it back to that you have about your own experience and how others may perceive it, the less of a gap you have to bridge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And storytelling doesn't always involve words. Right? Mm-hmm. There's so much more story, which is why it's interesting when you spend time with silence, you realize there's lots of nonverbal communication, right? You start to sorry, I'm taking a left turn into woo-woo, but you can start to sense that energy. You can start to feel energy move into flow. Even if everybody's had the experience of feeling being watched, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has had that. But yeah, spending time in silence allows these nonverbals to become a lot more.
And I'm going to actually do a little bit of correction there. That's not woo at all. It is literally science.
There we go.
There is literally evidence to prove a lot of these conversations in different language. But I have a little invitation for everybody. When you're in public the next time, I want you to just intently stare at someone who's not looking at you and count how long it takes for them to look your way and make eye contact. I bet you're going to be surprised because we've all had that where we like look and we see, and then someone like quickly looks away, or sometimes they keep their gaze on you. But try it because you'll be surprised. I mean, we literally have phrases like you could cut the air with a knife. It was so tense in there.
Right. Yeah.
The most non-feeling, non-woo-woo executive has said those words.
Yeah.
We all feel it. And when we tap into it, that's when those synchronicities happen because we're like, oops, something's happening. What is that? Oh, I'm going to go over there and pay attention. And then usually something pretty amazing happens.
And I think that's true for intuition as much as it is for nonverbal communication. There are signs. Your deeper inner self knows so much more than you give it credit for.
Oh, yeah.
But when you build trust, as we were saying earlier, with yourself again, a lot more of that intuition is not only clearer, but what you do as a result of the intuition becomes a lot easier to execute.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a real good way to cultivate that is just to go for a walk with no aim in mind and just, do you want to go right or do you want to go left?
Yeah.
And just kind of follow your nose and see where it takes you. Because that process of being in the moment and just, oh, that's curious, let me go over there. Like you'll experience things. And then from there you can make decisions and, you start to grow it. Or even just what do you want to eat tonight, honey? You know what you want to eat. Just say it.
Stop dancing the merry-go-round. Just tell me.
Because otherwise we're going to get into a situation where there's hangry that nobody's going to win.
Oh, there are so many strategies that Em and I have in place for avoiding hangry decisions because we recognize that is a danger zone for both us.
Yeah. But like, here's where DJ Sarah would come in and play the Danger Zone song.
Hey, there you go. But that's why hiking, I think, there's so many advantages to being in and around nature. And having grown up basically as a Mowgli in the backyard of an island jungle, I think that's where hiking, that sense of exploration, that sense of uncovering something that's a little bit different. You've got 6 paths ahead of you. Do you follow one or do you create your own, right? So we're stuck in offices, we're stuck in, corporate scenarios. Making time for yourself, whether it's for hiking, meditation, exercise, sleep, making time is critical. And we never, or some of us struggle to justify the benefit of making time for ourselves. And if you flip the question or the statement, how much does not making time for yourself cost you? In what ways does it cost you?
Yeah. When you create that time for yourself, you're declaring that you are important.
Yeah.
And if you have the argument of, well, no, you're not. Do you have children?
I don't know.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm saying this is a question. If you're saying I'm not important, do you have children? Do you have an animal? Do you have a spouse? Do you run a business? Do you have parents who want to see you? Pretty sure if you ask them that question, they'd say you're important.
One of my big real aha moments, pivotal aha moments, was when I understood I'm a people pleaser, right? It's spent 35 years or 30 years of my life people pleasing.
You're a recovering people pleaser.
Well, yeah, the last 5 years or so I'm recovering. But I had this moment of, you don't always have to, it's not about putting yourself first. It's about not always putting yourself last. And of course, context plays into it. It's, it's not about being a good person and being polite and allowing other people to go ahead of you. It's about not recognizing how important it is to accept your own value for yourself, right? When you are valuable to yourself, it changes your mindset. It changes your approach. It changes your goals. It changes a lot.
Absolutely. And usually people who are trying to please others don't have very healthy boundaries, which is why we get depleted. I was there myself as well. Actually, when I had an online coaching program, one of the core pillars was around boundaries, and tied into that is people pleasing. And there are a lot of people who self-identify as a people pleaser or a recovering people pleaser, but there's a lot of people who don't. And essentially, if your self-esteem is determined by what you do for others or what you do for your work, you are a people pleaser.
Yeah.
If you rely on that external validation, that's people pleasing. And it usually, one of the best examples of this is, have you heard of The Giving Tree?
Yeah.
Shel Silverstein. It's a poem. There's a little video back in the 70s about it. And like at that time, the moral was like, wow, look at giving so much because he loves the little boy so much, until the tree is like gives shade because the boy sits under it, then like uses the sticks for firewood, then cuts it down and builds a boat, and then comes back and sits on the stump like, wow, look at how much I gave to this boy because I loved him. And that was the narrative that we were all fed. There was no return from the boy in this whole story. And so that is what's called idiot compassion. It's allowing someone to be unkind to you in the name of your kindness, but that's not kind at all. So being nice is one-way street. Being kind is a two-way street. And that is a real big part of the yogic practice. Ahimsa is do no harm to others or to any being, but including yourself.
And I think it's including yourself. There's this wonderful exercise, and I'm failing to remember where it came from, that said, if you were to list the top 5 people that you love, right? It's your parents, your significant other, it's, whoever it ends up being. And inevitably, people fail to write themselves on that list, right? Mm-hmm. We learn that you belong on that list somewhere. It doesn't have to be number 1.
Right.
It doesn't have to be number, last. But you belong on the list of people that you love the most. Yes,
absolutely. That should be the baseline. And, just kind of following on this people-pleasing conversation, to help people understand where they might be doing it, I'd like to highlight 3 different types of people pleasers. So there's the mindset people pleasers. And this is the belief where we have to strive for everyone to like us and get the approval of other people. So the true north means that your behavior is always to get other people to like you. You don't ever want anyone to be mad at you. You get really anxious if people get upset and express displeasure. So you're just seeking constant approval.
I would even sorry to interrupt you, I'd take it a step further. It's not always when somebody else expresses disapproval. It is when you perceive their disapproval without any indication externally.
Exactly.
You're creating the mountain for yourself to deal with.
And absolutely, that happens so often with this type of people pleaser. The habitual people pleaser are putting other people's needs ahead of their own at their expense. So this is a lot of times mothers, right? Never taking care of themselves, pouring from an empty cup, constantly just serving other people, but neglecting themselves, not feeling worthy, or that's selfish. When actually, let's use the aviation analogy here. If you are trying to run around and put an oxygen mask on 400 people on that flight, you will pass out before you get it out on everybody. And that is actually extremely selfish.
Put it on first.
You put it on first, then you can help everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the feeling people pleasers. These are people who use their pleasing skills in an attempt to avoid negative feelings. So they try to control other people's emotional experience.
Yeah.
And we all go through variations of that. There's no like right or wrong here. It's not saying that you should never do these things. I still do them. If my partner gets upset, I definitely am like trying to, hey, how do I make him happy again? Well, no, I can't actually make him anything. Right?
You feel that you own the requirement of making other people happy. Yes. Pleasing your bosses, your colleagues, your significant others, the owners that you represent, insert your thing here. And I think that's another one of those things about it erasing perfect is when we let go of the obligations that we impose upon ourselves. We feel that I must be the best. I must be perfect. I must do whatever. Again, insert your thing here.
Yeah.
You're going to let go of that. Then all of a sudden, successes start coming your way. You start hitting the wins. And I think that's an important topic that's a little bit different to talk about. It's so important to celebrate your own wins.
I was totally just typing that as you were saying it. You're so in sync. It's great.
When you fail to identify your wins and you fail to appreciate there goes another one of those things. When you fail to do that, you're constantly in the cycle of, if I didn't recognize my own win, it means I failed. It's very binary. And if you did good, good is okay. If you did great, good is okay. Great is okay. If you did outstanding, outstanding is okay.
Right.
But when you start to recognize, you know what, I did a thing and I did it well, good for you. It's unnatural for some people to have that thought process, but it is critical. It is absolutely critical to realize objectively, not subjectively, what it is that you bring to the table, what it is that you do, what it is that you offer, who it is that you are. Think of that objectively and practice. The practice is key to this. It can't be done in a single session.
Yep.
Practice trying to identify the value you bring and the value you offer.
Absolutely. And so I want to segue on that into one of the questions I like to ask all of my guests. What would you say is your superpower? What's something that you've practiced and is a part of your identity that you would say is a superpower?
One of the kindest compliments I've ever received, and it's come in a few different flavors, has been around the being a healer and having healing energy. Whether or not that is my superpower, if I were able to choose a superpower, I think it would be a healer. And maybe that's through storytelling, maybe that's through another mechanism. mechanism. But yeah, a healer.
I like that. You do have a very calming energy, which can be very healing for others. So I agree with that very much.
My sister used to make me put the kids to sleep.
The sleep whisperer, the toddler whisperer. I love it. Who would you say is on your personal board of directors? This is the people, whether they're fictional, real, modern, from the past, in your inner circle or not. Who are the lenses you borrow to give yourself a new perspective when you make decisions?
Aliens. No.
Me too.
My personal board of directors. Instead of naming individuals, what I would say is that my board's incredibly diverse. I have got some members that are woo-woo and spiritual and are in an elevated plane, not bound by terrestrial constraints. I've got some advisors on that board that are incredibly practical, that work within very strict boundaries, methodical, practical. I've got some people who really love me, my parents, my significant other, M. Sorry, she hates that term. My fiance, M. She promised me she wouldn't listen to the podcast as it was live, but she is going to watch after. So yeah. Be careful. But I also like to have people that, not to say that they don't care, but have a different perspective. I don't want the board to ever really agree on a lot, right?
Yeah, that's the purpose of a board, different perspectives.
That's it. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'll add one person, myself. I want to make sure I'm on my own board. I want to make sure that I know how to represent myself.
Yes. Yes. I can't say that yes more emphatically, but it's so true, because while we're borrowing these lenses, what I love about it was when people have an avatar, or they have someone from the past, or maybe let's say Oprah's on your board, but you've never met Oprah, right? You're using this perspective of how you perceive this person and how you think they make decisions based on how they show up in the world, but ultimately you're still making the decision yourself. So it's a little bit of like a head fake for people who are so new to personal development work to understand that they're still making the decision. But that is absolutely the first person that should be appointed to your board is you.
Yeah.
Because yes, you're going to take into consideration these other perspectives, but you are making the decision.
That's it. That's it. And again, goes right back to the advice, point. Sometimes by asking what somebody is asking the board, what should I do? I'll hear, 12 different things come up, and that'll help me identify 11 things I don't want to do, or 12 things I don't want to do. What that narrows down the scope of what I do want to do. So sometimes it's the what not to do that's more useful.
Oh, absolutely. I have someone on my board who sometimes we have a conversation, and the clarity that comes out of that is very much what I don't want to do or don't want to happen, which is always very insightful, because it's probably a perspective you didn't even consider a consequence of the thing that you were examining, right? So that's why it's so important to have the diversity.
But we tie our identity into the advice that we give. So if it's not followed, then there's hell to pay for it. Let's back off of that. Let's just give advice for the sake of it, to allow the person you're talking to come to their own conclusion. Give them the tools, let them build the house.
What I'm hearing is accept reality for what it is, and you will suffer less.
Yeah. Be okay with it, right? Don't try to control. Nothing in this life, the only thing, if you were to listen to the Stoics, the absolute only thing we can control is our reaction to the world around us.
Yes.
That is the only thing that we've got. So use it, and use it well.
I love it. Yes. Advice from sage Tristan Punnett. Now go use it. No,
I grew the beard just to say that. That's all.
I mean, why do you think I dyed my hair white? I mean, maybe subconsciously that was part of it. Who knows? I don't know. But my intuition, told me to. So I listened. Final question. There's been an intelligent life form that has landed on Earth, and you are the first human they meet.
Mm.
What do they learn about humanity because they've met you?
Well, they learn about Caribbean food and music first, that's for sure.
Oh, they won the jackpot then, I'm sure.
They learn that humanity is full of extremes. It's full of diversity and it's full of extremes. It's also full of potential. What some might consider good, we can see extreme good, right? And we can name all the examples of extreme good that we perhaps don't see as much as we should. But it exists. And when we see it, man, do we break up? But by the same token, we are also capable of the extremes of evil or bad, or, name your adjective, which we see these things happening in the world around us now or in the past or potential for the future. So we are a species of extremes, of diversity, of extremes, but also of potential. It's harnessed in the right way, we can do some really amazing things.
I love that. What a beautiful way to end today's episode. Tristan, thank you so much for being here with me in the lounge today. If people would like to connect and get some more of your wisdom and your awesome energy, where can they find you?
I'm around on Tuesday nights. No. LinkedIn, send me a message. I don't do Facebook. So yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Let's have a conversation.
Amazing. Tristan, thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Sarah.
You're welcome. And to everyone else who's listening, I hope you enjoy the weekend, and we will be back next week with another episode in the lounge. If you liked today's episode, please share on whatever platform you're watching and subscribe on YouTube so that you can stay up to date of all upcoming episodes.